So in this one, I want to share my perspective on the nature of dark and light. And in this, I want to share it from the perspective of understanding that they're the same thing. They're exactly the same thing. Light and dark are exactly the same thing. Just varying degrees of that one thing. In the same way, we're masculine and feminine, or man and woman, are the same. But they're varying degrees of that one thing, and that is gender. It's so easy to think of a man and a woman as opposite. And of course they are, but only as being of the polarized degree of that one thing, being gender. For example, if you compared a woman to a rock, surely they're far more opposite than a man and a woman. You see? So a man and a woman, they are the same thing. They're varying degrees of that same one thing, and that is gender. And the way to tell is you can describe a man as being less masculine or more feminine, and it's the same thing. And it's the same with light and dark. They are varying degrees. They are polarized degrees of the same thing. And in the same way, you can describe the dark as less light. You can describe the light as less dark. They're varying degrees of the same thing. So this is really important to understand because, when I talk about these things, I talk about them in a linear way. But the reality is that they're non-linear. There's no beginning and there's no end to both. And so this is really important to understand because the closest part of, let's say, so viewing it as a spectrum, which I always do just to help describe it, is I always view it in a linear way. So you imagine it's like a thermometer. On the far left is the dark, on the far right is the light. And you imagine it like a thermometer. So you go up or you go down, it's becoming less dark or more light. You go down, it's becoming less light, more dark. So that's linear. It goes in a line. But the reality of it is you would take the far edges, you take the far left edge of that line and the far right edge of that line, the far left being dark and the far right being white, and you would bend them in a circle so that they would join each other. And so it's like a ring. So it is linear, but it is also spherical. Well, it's not like an actual sphere, but it's like a ring. And so if you imagine this in your mind, and imagine yourself as a human being that's striving to, radiate the brightest light or to experience the highest emotion, joy, ecstasy, exaltation. Most human beings are striving for those really high emotional, those really high states of emotion. Or if you think about it in this fashion that I've just described, where it's like a linear ring, the closest part of the spectrum to the brightest light is the darkest darkness. It's the darkest darkness. And so once if you've listened to a lot of my podcast episodes, I've talked about the nature of certain emotions, and I always talk about sinking into an emotion. So especially if it's a dark emotion, and a lot of people get the willies when I talk about claiming the I am of dark emotions. I am insignificant. I am disgraceful. I am disgusting. I am foul. I am perverted. I am. Claiming the darkness. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to create it. I'm going to manifest it in my life. But it's quite the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. So when I'm saying sink into that emotion, when you claim the darkness, they're just emotions. You just feel them. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of inside an emotion. It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. It's just you're resistant to the truth of it. That's the problem. That you are those things. You are insignificant. You are perverted. You are distorted. You are powerless. These are valid aspects of who and what you are in a certain context. And mainly it's from the context of the innocence of a child who literally has an authentic experience of being powerless. Whether it's powerless to defy their parents, powerless to defend themselves against a much bigger bully. The authentic experiences of being powerless. But we resist it. Nonetheless, the truth of that child in that moment was that I am powerless. It just is. It just is. It's authentic. But so many people, especially in the, self-awareness kind of space, are just they're trying to claim their power and to be powerful. And they're standing up against who they see as their oppressors, trying to fight for their power, to reclaim their power, not realizing that it's the resistance to the emotion underneath it that's the issue. They're trying to resist their powerlessness and reclaim it off of people who have no idea what they're talking about. They're trying to claim it off people who they see as the perpetrators of why they're powerless, when in truth, it's their inability to claim the truth of the experience for them and how it feels that I just am powerless, because that's the feeling that's arising within my body. I just am that. For certain people whose ancestors experienced things like slavery, there's generational perceptions and adopted perspectives that are held within their DNA that they're still carrying today. Trauma of when their ancestors were on slave boats and jumped in the water because they couldn't bear the idea of being enslaved. And so they still have this fear of the ocean today. These are valid. And so this person is powerless in that moment. Their fear of water, it seems irrational. Nonetheless, their ancestors, that perspective is held within the DNA, because your perception changes your genes and you adopt your genes from your parents. So if the perspective of your ancestors, whatever the lens they were looking at their environment through and perceiving it through and living it through, that changes their genes and you adopt your genes. And so you come into this life, you're powerless against that until you recognize it and realize the truth of it. And there's no way you can, you know, for the average person, there's no way for you to remember your ancestors and relive the event and reclaim the truth of it. And so the only tool you have available to you is to claim the truth of it now, in this moment. I am powerless. It just is. I am. Doesn't matter if it's irrational, because the authentic experience is that you are, and that's all that matters. The interpretation of the emotion now is all that matters. Doesn't matter whether whoever thinks it's valid or not. Doesn't even matter whether you do. It's the only thing that matters is your interpretation of the experience now. If you feel powerless, I am that. Just claim it. Don't try and negotiate with it or wreck it, or try to convince yourself otherwise, or take two parts of yourself. One part of you that feels like you're the most powerful being in existence. And believe me, there is an aspect of you that believes that and actually knows that. That does not negate that there's a part of you that feels powerless, because the authentic experience is that I am powerless. I am powerless. And so rather than trying to convince that other part of you that, no, you're not powerless, you're this powerful being. You're the most powerful being in existence. You're strong and you're proud and da-da-da. You're trying to tell that other part of you that it's not valid, that this is the valid truth. You cannot create inner harmony that way. Not possible. Understanding is the only way. You have to give voice to both parts. And so here you see the same thing again. The opposing parts of you that are at odds, that are conflicted. One of them is the one that feels powerful and knows that they are powerful. And the other one is the one that feels powerless and knows that they are powerless. So does the dark try and convince the light that the dark is right? Or does the light try and convince the dark that the light is true? What point would there be in the light convincing the dark that, no, I'm light? The dark's going, well, no, I'm dark. It's the same thing. They're on the same spectrum. I am powerless and I am powerful. It just is. We're both, because the deepest part of us is a state of perfection. We called the 0 point, where pure perfection exists, a state of pure perfection. Now, it's a stagnant state where there is literally no movement, no energy arising, no desire, no thought. It's a state of pure perfection, of being whole and complete. So there is a part of you that knows this. There is a part of you that feels this within them. And that's why this universe that we live in, that's why it expands eternally, because the nature of this universe is that it never reaches perfection. And so that perfect part of us is always striving for that perfection, and therefore infinitely creating something new. Now, I don't want to go into that now. I've done other podcast episodes about that, but understand that we are, from the perspective of being whole and complete, we're the entire spectrum. We're the darkness and we're the light. We're powerless and we're powerful. We're significant and we're insignificant. It's really easy to shift your perspective into the space, because it's all a matter of perspective. It's always a matter of perspective. You may have a vocation and you've mastered your craft. You're creating an impact in the world. People value what you do. You've created personal wealth. and you're fulfilled. And you've created a significant impact in the world. And so you are significant. And then I can take a photo of you standing next to a redwood tree. A redwood tree being this humongous, massive tree. And you're insignificant compared to that. And then I can compare you to the size of the earth or the size of the galaxy. And you're insignificant. See, you're both. And this is the nature of this, of polarity, where, you can see why divide and conquer works as a tactic. Because for some reason, we're trying to fight the other one. The polarized aspects of that one thing are trying to convince the other party that their perspective is valid, when the truth is that both are valid. Both. But they have to coexist rather than play a zero-sum game and nullify the other one. So I want to go back to the perspective, so the darkness and the light again. Oh, actually, before I do that, I was talking about emotions, and you sink into the emotion, claim the I am of it. I am insignificant. I am disgraceful. I am disgusting. I am foul. What happens is, the more you allow that darkness, eventually, at some point, you just pop out the end and you step into the light aspect of that darkness. You step into the radiant light part of it. Like with the linear line from left to right, when you curve it round so that the ends meet, the darkness becomes the light. When you sink into your emotions and feel the darkness of those emotions, claim the I am of them, stop resisting them, you become the light aspect of them. And you would be absolutely blown away at what some of your dark aspects become when you allow them. On my journey, this was quite a while ago now, but I was feeling, I had an emotion of feeling like I always had this issue where when I was intimate with, if I had a girlfriend, I never wanted to be the one to make the first move. Like I did, and it's because I didn't want to come across as creepy. I didn't want them to feel like, a masculine presence violating their space. And so I always wanted to just create space for them to feel comfortable enough to, gesture that it was okay. I thought this was a gentlemanly thing to do and all the rest of it. But what I discovered was that there's this feeling of that men are somehow perverted or, like creepy. And I could feel it. And when I sunk into the truth of that, there is a part of me that believes that I am creepy just because I'm a man. You see? And so this could have come from my parents, their parents, who knows where I got this from. Could have come in this life, you never know. Could have come through, the movies I've watched or whatever it may be. But there's a part of me that believes that I am creepy just because I'm a man. And so, the next time I felt that emotion, I decided to sink into it, and I sunk into it, and I just claimed it. And man, there's darkness there. It was, I am creepy. I am perverted. I am distorted. I am, grotesque. And, these are parts of myself that were inside me just because of a belief I had about men. Hearing all the stories in the news about what men are capable of, and, people like Genghis Khan, and, you see programs on the TV of, Vikings raiding and raping and pillaging. My truth. I held this perspective about men, and I'm a man. And so I held these beliefs, and I found them within myself, the truths of these things. And so I sunk into them, and I felt them, and it wasn't pleasant, claimed the I am of them. And then all of a sudden, I sunk into this absolute purity. Absolute purity. It was total purity. It was total purity. And as I kind of basked in the purity, it became, there was this real innocence to it. And so there was a really unique part of it. And this was one of the first signs I got about I was starting to get signs about the meaning of mercy. And I've already done a podcast episode on the nature of mercy. But I could sense mercy in there, when I was feeling the nature of being distorted and grotesque. I was getting images of, war and fighting and, murder and all those kinds of things. But there was some, I was sensing that a merciless nature to it. There was a softness within it. And I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting that. I was later to discover through another experience the nature of mercy and the brutality of it, and that it will destroy everything in its path and even annihilate a perceived source of suffering. And so you can see how close, something as beautiful as mercy is to something that we deem as, a masculine thing, when in truth it's actually a feminine thing, destruction and annihilation. So when I've sunk into the purity, it was pristine. It was, there was innocence within it as well. But the point I'm making is, see how close the darkness is to the light. It's literally the same thing. It becomes the light. There's no beginning and no end to it. There's just varying degrees of this one thing. And so, if you want to experience more joy in your life, if you want to experience higher emotions and higher emotional states and all these kinds of things, then, but what you're doing is you're finding that a lot of the experiences in your life is you've got negative thoughts, you've got negative emotions, you maybe feel depressed, you maybe feel, powerless, maybe you feel, what's that word futility. And you're trying to move towards joy, but away from these things. Turn around and face the other way and go and dive into them. Just claim the I am of them. The true I am of them. Feel it as you. I am insignificant. Life is futile. I am futile. Futility for me, when I claimed the truth of the futility within me, that was one of the huge turning points of my life, because I began to see that resistance to futility was keeping me from moving forward in so many aspects of my life. My refusal to experience futility and to accept my own futility just kept me in a state of like suffering for quite a long time. And to the point where the having hope of making progress in a certain area of my life became like torture, because I get that glimpse of hope and I think this is the time that I'm going to move forward. And then I would slide back into futility again. And so it's this in and out of hope, futility, hope, futility, hope, futility. And, there was a point in there where I was just almost broken, I was like done. And that's when you begin to entertain, when you're in futility, you've had hope, you've lost hope, you've had hope, you've lost hope. You begin to entertain a way to end the suffering, because the suffering of this hope is intense. It's intense. And so once it begins to become suffering, you've got mercy starts creeping in, and an act of self-mercy, because it just arises, it just arises. Mercy is like, no, there's suffering here. I'm going to eradicate it. And that's when the thoughts of, I could take my own life. I could blow this thing up. I could destroy this. And they're just thoughts, but they arise nonetheless. And, just before I had the breakthrough with futility, I was able to, I used the thought of ending my life as to soothe the futility. I was just telling myself, it doesn't matter how bad it gets. I can always this. So it's never that I'm actually going to do it, but it's a way of coping with the suffering I'm experiencing now. So no matter how bad it gets, I can always this, I can always that. And, this was a time of my life where I was just totally immersed in a project and just moving towards it with intense passion, but just biting off way more than I could chew, creating responsibility for myself and, building a prison of my own making. And, feeling like the whole world was on my shoulders. And so, that was a really important time for me in terms of, accepting my futility, accepting my powerlessness, letting go of trying to control my circumstances, resistance to, a lot of my darkness was shattered. But I just remember distinctly when I accepted futility, claimed the I am of it, everything began to rush forward in a huge way. And I never looked back. So that's a huge one. That is a huge one. So to bring it back to the nature of light and dark, the varying degrees of the same thing. And, if you look at, if any of you have been involved with graphic design, they've got these scales for measuring the colors of things, RGB and hex, and there's other ones as well. And they measure, so on one of them, you measure black, and the blackest color is 0. And then the lightest color is 255. I don't know why it's 255. And so they measure all of the colors on the spectrum. So the darkest color is 000. It's the blackest. And the brightest and lightest color is 255, 255, 255. And every other color on the spectrum is either more than 0 or less than 255. You see? And so you can say that you've got the polarity of darkness being light and the polarity of lightness being dark. They're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. And everything in between, all the other colors on the spectrum, are either less than 255 or more than 0. And that's literally how it works, is the colors, when you digitize them like this, you're saying that blue, you're describing it as less black, or more white than another thing. So everything is just moving around on the spectrum and is in between the darkness and the light. So, but all of them are dark and light. All of those colors are varying degrees of darkness and light on that spectrum. And, if you, let's say, if you were to paint the blackest room that you could, let's say you've got a room in your house, it's got no windows, it's got a door that's totally sealed, no light can get in, and you wanted to turn that into the blackest room possible. You could buy the special paint, and they measure how black paint is by its ability to absorb light. So you go in, you paint the room with this black paint, the special black paint that absorbs, all light. And if you go into that room, it'd be like there's no beginning and no end. And it's like if you were watching, if the door to that room was open and you were watching someone walk into it, it would seem like they're shrinking, just getting smaller and smaller as they're walking away from you, because there's no beginning and there's no end. It's pure darkness. And this is the thing I want to hone in on, that hopefully you could shift your perspective if you're struggling with this. And that is that even if you took, let's say you got a piece of cardboard and you painted it the whitest white. So you've got your darkest room, blackest room in the world, painted black, and then you paint a piece of cardboard the whitest white in the world. If you took that white cardboard into that black room, close the door, you wouldn't see the white piece of cardboard. You wouldn't see it at all. It would be black. And this is really, really profound to wrap your head around, because this is what black is. It's all of the frequencies. It's all of them. The white is inside the black. And so imagine now painting, thousands of white pieces of cardboard and filling that entire black room up with white pieces of cardboard. It's still going to be black. It's still going to be black. And this is the truth about space. This is the nature of space. That it's actually teeming with light. It's full of the potential of all creation. Is contained within space. And when you see a black hole, it's absorbing light. It's the same as that black room. Painting the walls with the blackest paint you can find. It's just absorbing light. It's its nature. And, when you, when you look at space, the fabric of space, it's pure blackness, because it contains all of the frequencies. It contains absolutely all of them. And so now if we painted those pieces of cardboard blue, or made them a combination of blue and green and red and brown and violet and yellow, and filled that room up with all those pieces of cardboard, that's pure blackness. All you would see is blackness. Because there has to be, in order for you to be able to see those colors, there would have to be a light source. And for there to be a light source, there would have to be something in existence that is less black. You see? And so this is important to understand about space and, the void. And, when you talk about, graphic designers, where the coding system on the colors, black is always represented as 0. It's because the 0 point is the state of pure perfection, where all exists as pure potentiality. And once you understand this, you understand that all of existence is actually a disintegration of space into light. It's disintegrating. It's becoming less whole. It's becoming less perfect. So the moment something materializes from out of space, let's say a sun being birthed out of a black hole, then that is a disintegration of a state of perfection. You've got the state of pure perfection of the 0 point. A sun is birthed, and that is, so it is becoming less perfect. And that is the nature of all of the universe. Is everything is disintegrating, and the moment it disintegrates, it's seeking its perfected state again. And that's how this all works. This entire universe is how it works. This is how the potential that exists within pure space, that's how it becomes. That's how it materializes, by becoming less perfect, and then instantaneously seeking its essence, which is pure perfection. So if you want to, so I want to use some analogies here, because, you find a lot of people who are, if you look at religious people who would call themselves Christians, they would look at Satanists or people, or Luciferians, or, anyone that is pro darkness, and they want to destroy them. They've got this intense fear of them. And, that's the classic example right there, good and evil. Really, they're just archetypes. Good and evil are just archetypes for light and dark. And, once we realize that they're the same in varying degrees of that one thing, then we can reconcile those parts of us that are good and evil, realize that they are varying degrees of the same thing. And that because all of us come from a state of pure perfection into the form we're in now, then all of us are capable of the entire spectrum. All of us are. All of us are. And, once you are, I don't want to say evolved enough, but self-aware enough to be able to claim the truth of any experience that you have, claim the truth of any emotions, allow any negative thoughts to become, any vision that contains a meaning that could lead to deeper and deeper truths, deeper and deeper emotions. Once you can do that without resisting them, and you're actually encouraging them and nurturing them, bringing them back home to perfection, to completion, you can truly be free in your life, because you'll never be striving for anything ever again, because you know that that thing that you're striving for can only come from a state of allowing something that you're resisting within you to come back to completion, to come back to perfection. And then your reality will just mirror to you that perfected state. So I'll leave it there. This is obviously a huge topic. I may create a podcast that goes specifically into the nature of good and evil. I've done one on evil, just about its nature, just on its own, rather than versus its antithesis. But I may explore that at some point. Okay, anyway, that's it for the nature of light and dark. Catch you soon.